Welcome back to the Fried Files, a subset of marketing influence. And our guest, as always, is Dr. Fu. I'm Paula Kioki, CEO of Outward Media. Welcome, Dr. Fu.
Thank you, Paula. Great to be here with you again.
Great to see you. So we're going to talk about why fraud thrives on anonymity. I can never say that word. So I've heard you say that fraud is fundamentally an identity problem. Can you unpack that? Because I think most people think of it as a traffic problem or a tech problem.
Yeah, there's multiple layers of that, and I think it's worth unpacking that a little bit. So, a lot of people talk about invalid traffic or IVT. That's when a bot or basically a fake visitor visits a website. Okay, so that's not a human visiting the website. So it's trivial for software programs to hit your web page and whatever. And even these days, we see a lot of that happening. So on mainstream sites like the news sites, CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, there are a lot of these AI crawlers that are there to scrape their content or steal it for trading purposes or whatever. So there's always a level of bot activity there. The second would be really to think about the users, right? So a lot of the way marketers have done digital advertising in the past 15 years has been targeting users, right? So you heard of targeting cookies, and the cookies are basically a representation of the user. So the theory has always been the right person to the right, at the right ad to the right person at the right time. Okay.
Right times. Yeah.
So the theory, again, like most things in digital marketing, it's great in theory, but in practice, it doesn't really work that well. Okay. So years and years ago, Nielsen they published a chart that showed that only 5% of your ads were actually shown to the right audience. That includes basic stuff like the right age range, even the right gender, right? And that kind of stuff. And there's other studies over the years that have shown that less than 10% of the ads, if you just take one targeting parameter like gender, less than 10% of the ads were shown to even the correct gender. Okay. And then finally, some of the data in these DMPs, data management platforms, is so dirty that you're better off just literally flipping a coin, right? If you wanted to target your ads to males versus female, just leave it open. Meaning don't even buy the targeting data, because if you do buy the targeting data, it's worse than random. Okay, so you're actually making your campaigns worse. Now I
And paying
know
more. And paying more.
and paying more, right? Because you're
Yeah.
paying for the targeting segments.
Target.
The point is a lot of this, and I'm going to go back one step and talk about how this evolved and why the data is so bad. Okay. So a lot of the platforms will say, okay, if we are not really sure if they're a male or female, let's just mark this user as both male and female. So therefore, any advertiser, whether they're targeting male or female, we can get their ad and we can make the money. Do you see how there's an incentive
Yeah.
to say,
Oh, yeah.
oh, right? Now, okay, there's less nefarious scenarios than that, but let me kind of explain how it evolved. In the very, very early days of targeting, they would basically look at which sites you visited to try to deduce who you are and what you like, right? This is unlike search ads, right? Because in search ads, you actually type in the keyword of what you're looking for. So then the ads are based on that keyword. So they really don't have to care who you are. But when we're talking about display ads where the person's not actually typing something in, they kind of have to deduce who you are, what you like. Okay. So in the early days, they did that by looking at the sites that you visited. So if a particular user, this is an anonymous user because they don't log into the sites that they're visiting. So if that user visited Victoria's Secret, maybe a feminine hygiene product site or whatever, you could probably deduce it was a female user, right? And another user, if they visited Maxim, Playboy, Sports Illustrated, those kind of sites, or ESPN, they might deduce that they were male. Again, you can already see how kind of loosey-goosey that is. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So then when you take that a step further, when that user visits Walmart, okay, what do you deduce about them, right? You can't say anything about who they are, how old they are,
No.
young or whatever. Okay.
No.
So then they started tracking what products they looked at. Okay.
Okay.
So that's where we get into the issue of, oh, why is this particular product that I just looked at on Amazon now following me around the internet? It's because someone recorded that somewhere and set a cookie and said, oh, this person looked at this digital camera, therefore they're interested in this digital camera, therefore keep showing them ads of that digital camera, right? So that's how a lot of this targeting evolved over time. And very few people actually ask the question, how accurate is this data? Or whether this data was accurate at all. Okay. So that's how we start getting into identity, right? So years and years ago, all the browsers would have cookies, right? Including this Apple and iOS side of things. But due to privacy reasons, Apple many years ago did away with third-party cookies, right?
Right.
So in that entire ecosystem, it became harder and harder to target. But in Chrome and Android, so Android smartphones, they still have those third-party cookies for use in targeting. Okay. So a lot of advertisers bought into the notion of using identity, using targeting, buying data from DMPs, doing cookie matches to try to target doctors versus patients and that kind of stuff. So I think the moral of the story here is to really start asking questions and running tests to see whether your ads are actually being targeted to the right people at all. And I think some of it is as easy as running a campaign without those targeting cookies, without those identities, and seeing if you're getting the same outcomes as if you were using. It's the same test that we run for brand safety filters, right? So you run it for one campaign and you turn it off for another campaign. And then you see, okay, was there any difference in where your ad showed up or whatever, right? Same thing with fraud verification. You turn on the IVT filter, run it for a week, you turn off the IVT filter, run it for the next week, see if there's any changes. If there's nothing, then you know what you're paying for from these verification vendors. Bot detection, brand safety detection, accuracy of targeting, all of that kind of stuff. You will start to determine, okay, it's not having any kind of effect. So then the question for yourself is whether you should continue to pay for it, right? So
And
here's one other concept. I call it greenfield advertising. So let me
okay.
kind of unpack that for a second. When advertisers are buying all this data for targeting, they're essentially trying to target the users who have either visited their sites, liked their product, or have purchased from them before. So if you think of, in general terms, maybe 1% of the market has already purchased from you before. The other 99% have not purchased from you before, right? So if you're trying to hyper target those people who have purchased from you before, that's a very small universe, first of all. And the other thing is I like to use this milk analogy. No matter how much targeted milk advertising I see, my family can only drink 4 quarts of milk a week. I'm not going to buy the 5th quart of milk because I saw more ads, because we simply can't drink the 5th quart of milk. Okay. So a lot of these advertisers are trying to hyper target ads to people who have bought before, and they're missing out on the other 99% that have not bought from them before, or simply don't even know they exist. So the
Mhm.
concept of greenfield advertising means start showing ads with less targeting to other people who simply don't even know you exist yet. By generating the awareness, right? If you're showing ads to the other 99%, if one of those 99% actually started buying from you, you've essentially doubled your sales, right? Because the
Mhm.
1%
Mhm.
already bought from you, and now you get another 1% to buy from you because they didn't know about you before. That is truly incremental. Those are new sales that would not have occurred in the absence of advertising. So those are all incremental. That's going to actually drive your business. So this ties back to what we said on an earlier episode, right? Remember, 15 years of revenue data from 225 US public companies, some of the largest advertisers in US. They did not grow when they shifted all of their budgets into digital and started doing hyper targeting. And that's because they started missing out or not doing enough of the awareness advertising. Whereas companies like Progressive and Geico with the little lizard, they maintained a healthy share of their advertising budgets in TV, and they
Mhm.
continue to drive awareness. Or even if people were aware, they kept themselves on the top of mind. So by the next time you need to think about insurance or changing insurance, they would come up first, right? So they actually grew. So it kind of all ties back to what we talked about earlier, which is think about how to do more awareness advertising right? A lot of advertisers have overdone it on the identity, on the targeting. And we haven't even talked about fraud in identity, right? We haven't even talked
Right.
about how bots can impersonate doctors and other things just to earn a higher CPM. So I think the moral of the story here is make sure you look at your own mix and balance the hyper targeting with enough awareness so that new customers can become aware of your product, your company, your services, so that they can buy from you.
And then when you talk about the fire and the identity, I mean, the words, because we're in the business, but people throw around the deterministic versus the probabilistic distinction, which I think you touched on a little bit earlier. But do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, let me get into that because I serve pharma clients and there are many characteristics that are very similar to financial institutions and whatever. So we also serve insurance companies. So pharma clients would upload a list of doctors, right? NPI numbers, which are national prescriber IDs. So when they upload the list, and also they might even upload email addresses, they do a process called cookie matching, right? So typically a company like LiveRamp would say, okay, this list, we can actually find cookies in our pool that pertain to this particular person. So
And
typically there's going to be 10, 15, 20 cookies that they think pertain to that particular person, that particular doctor. Okay. So then when these cookies show up, in the programmatic fire hose, right? They would bid on that, thinking that they're targeting those particular doctors. So that's kind of the deterministic. But I'm going to put it this way: it's not as deterministic as you think it is. Okay, you uploaded the list, and everyone thinks, "Oh yeah, it works perfectly. We're going to target those specific doctors." But then when I start to see, okay, well, why are these ads running in kids coloring apps, solitaire, alarm clock apps, flashlight apps? Okay. And basically the agency comes back and says, oh yeah, it's the doctor, right? We know we're targeting them because we uploaded the list. Okay. Those are actually not, right? It's not that particular doctor. The cookie matching process is dirty at best, and it's just a wild guess at worst, right? They think these cookies are related. And on top of that, cookies turn over, right? So they have to keep doing that. So one of the things I ask my clients is, when was the last time you did a cookie sync? Right? If it was a year ago, it's not good enough. All those cookies have expired. You're not even targeting the right person. Okay. You're targeting a stale cookie that doesn't exist anymore. Okay. So a lot of those things, just the practitioners, the young marketers these days don't even know the questions to ask. So what you should do is not assume that the IDs are deterministic and exact. They're probabilistic and a guess. Okay. So you
yeah,
need to kind of run experiments, like maybe do a cookie sync once a quarter or maybe once a month. I know that costs money, but if you want your data to be accurate and up to date, you need to update your cookies because those cookies do turn over and you may not be targeting the same person.
wasting money.
Yeah.
We had a situation where we provided a data file. It was all CPAs to, I'm not going to mention the DSP, but they came back and said that half of it was unemployed students.
Oh,
We
yeah.
don't have a
And I've
file.
heard of other stories like there's 360 million auto intenders in the US when there's 360 million people in the
It's
US,
right.
right? And
Yeah.
babies and old people are not buying cars. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's how flawed the data is. But
Yeah.
again, not enough marketers are asking about the data and the quality of it.
They just assume that they're dealing with, this big supposed reputable company, that everything's going to be fine until it's not.
Yeah, I
So
would say that those companies are not trying to commit fraud, but also they don't know how dirty their data is,
yeah,
right? And
I agree with you.
they're not going to be on the lookout for you if you're not looking out for yourself. So again, the thing to do would be to run these tests, right? So if you're an automotive marketer, buy the data, target your ads for a campaign, and then turn it off, and then run untargeted. See if there's any change, right? If there's no change, no observable difference, that means all the targeting data that you bought wasn't doing anything.
And then you're paying the premium.
Yes,
So
sometimes a lot.
what about the match rates? A lot of marketers, they're evaluating identity vendors. What should they be paying attention to?
The actual match rate.
Yeah.
So what we're actually seeing, so I'm running some experiments with identity vendors right now. The actual match rates could be in the single digits, like 1 to 3%. Okay.
Are you
Um,
serious?
yeah, let me
Wow.
give you an analogy. So Video completion rates suffer from the same problem. So the platforms are reporting 90 to 99% video completion rates. What that means is that someone actually watched your 15 or 30-second ad through to completion. Okay. But did you know that all the bad guys have to do, and this is because of the limitation of the technology, all they have to do is call the complete.gif measurement pixel to mark that video as watched to completion when the video ad was not even run at all. Okay. So this is the way tracking has been built up, right? So there's a tracking pixel called the first quartile, then the midpoint, then the third quartile, and then the complete.gif. All the bad guys have to do is, if they're honest, right, they would actually call the first quartile pixel when it's a quarter of the way into the video ad, right? And then the midway and whatever. But most fraudsters are not honest, right? That's their nature.
Yeah,
so
that's why they're a fraudster.
That's why they're fraudsters. So basically they call the complete.gif when the video ad was not even played or called. Okay, so then the reporting looks like, oh, all my video ads got watched to completion. Okay. So I'm using that story to illustrate that you should ask similar questions in terms of match rates and identity providers and whatever. They tell you, oh, we got awesome match rates, 90%. Tell me how you got that number. Okay. So when I actually start matching, and we'll use a simple example, IP addresses, right? So how can it be a 99% match rate that's told to you by the vendor that's trying to sell you something when only 1% of the IP addresses even were the US, for example, right? I'm just using a simplistic example. It's like, that's not even possible what you told us. So again, it goes back to something we said in episode 2, which is you corroborate the data, right? Use different sources to see if they jive, right? They see if it makes sense together. Because any single point, any single metric can be easily and trivially spoofed or falsified. It's much harder for the bad guys to make two things look correct when taken together. So a way to corroborate the data would be to actually look at the data in different ways, bring in another data set, and just use common sense to see if it's even possible for what they're telling you is true, right? For it to be true. And when you do that, you'll quickly find that most of the stuff that you're being sold is complete smoke and mirrors, complete snake oil, complete BS, like we said in episode 3.
Well, to me, my big takeaway talking with you, Dr. Fu, is that marketers need to advocate for themselves because nobody else is going to do it. And they have to ask the right questions and look to get the right answers or they have a problem.
Yes.
And also use a service like yours that really peels back the onion.
Yeah, I mean, my tagline is "See through yourself," using my own last name, and the whole point it kind of captures the essence of what I talk about, which is like you don't have to take my word for it. Let's look at the data together and let's figure it out. If there's sufficient data there, you can troubleshoot a problem, right? And that's kind of contrary to the black box vendors, where when you ask them, okay, how did you mark this as a bot? They say, oh, well, we can't tell you. So it's like, I mean, a lot of them literally don't know how the tech works, right? The salespeople don't know how the tech works. The marketing people don't know how the tech works. So I don't fault them, but as a marketer, again, you have to advocate for yourself, ask the questions, ask for proof, ask them to show you and explain it to you. If they can't, then common sense will tell you, okay, they don't know what they're doing and you shouldn't be spending millions of dollars on it.
Absolutely not. And if they can't or won't, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So Dr. Fu, as always, you enlighten us. I appreciate you. And I look forward for our audience for our next segment 5, coming up shortly.
Sounds great. Thanks, Paula.
Thank you so much.